Welcome to the first episode of Before the Piece. I am Jenna Morland, and I'm here with my 7-foot sidekick, Tre Lopushinsky.
Yeah.
That song you just heard was written and performed by our first guest, Garry Oker. But before we talk about Garry and all the knowledge and stories he has, we wanted to recognize first that we're recording this podcast on traditional Dane-zaa land.
I am so excited for everyone to hear this first interview. You have absolutely no idea. This man has done a lot, and he has a lot of stories. And at a couple points, Jenna, and I told you this after, you and I were like leaned in.
Yeah, we were.
He was telling stories. Like, I'm supposed to be looking at the board and the levels and all this technical stuff, and I'm just like, oh my goodness.
We were in Garry's studio, and that's where he does his music and his art. So it was very cool to be in the studio with him and just see everything that he's done. Well, not everything, but some of what he's done. And we're actually hopefully going to have him back, right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about his music quite a bit because throughout this podcast, all the music here is from Garry. He wrote it, he performed it, and then he obviously gave us the opportunity to use it for this first podcast, which I'm very excited for. He actually, at the middle of our interview, just picked up a guitar and started singing. Well, unfortunately, we have podcast equipment and not music equipment to record. So we actually had to cut out his part where he randomly was singing because it just did not sound good enough.
Yeah, the guitar.
And even Garry after said it just wasn't working, and he did some drumming as well, and it just didn't work for the audio. So what we had done is during the podcast, you will actually hear one of Garry's produced songs. So when Jenna and Garry are kind of talking and talking about music, instead of him picking up the guitar, it will be one of his very, very lovely produced songs. So I'm so excited for that. But just talking about Garry and all the stories and knowledge he has, I just want to give kind of like a resume of what he's done. First of all, he's traveled throughout North America and Europe to study and work as a film director and visual artist. He speaks the Dane-zaa language. He has a master's degree from Royal Roads University, and he is the driving force behind the Tse'k'wa, which is one of the oldest archaeological sites discovered in BC, which was our main focus with Garry today. We talked a lot about Tse'k'wa.
Yeah, the history of the piece and the Dane-zaa is more than we can fit into an hour, which is how long our episodes are going to be. But we touched on Oker's family lineage a bit, and we spoke about the Beaver people, but most of it was Tse'k'wa.
I just wanted to make a note to the vibe in this first episode. And moving forward, we want this to be raw. We're going to mess up. Jenna and I definitely are going to mess up. And we did in this first episode, and Garry would correct us, and that's what we want. We want to sit there, we want to listen, we want to learn. This isn't about us. Jenna and myself are listening and learning with everyone else who's listening to the podcast. We're not the experts here. I never wanted us to be mistaken as so. So we just want to learn, and we just want to listen. So just a heads up, just a little spoiler alert. Sometimes Garry is speaking in the Dane-zaa language. Jenna would try to repeat, and she messes up a couple times until she gets it.
But I do get it eventually. But before we get into the interview with Garry, I just want to take a second to thank everyone who's currently listening right now. But then also, our major thank you goes to our sponsor, Tre Ventures. Without them, this podcast would not be possible. So thank you, Steve at Tre Ventures, and everyone there for sponsoring this.
Anyone who's been in Fort St. John for a long period of time, they know Tre, and they know that Tre has been serving our community and the energy industry since 2000 with tanks and vac trucks. And they're built on principles of hard work, service, and community. And they're very proud to offer their financial support to make this possible. Now, I know it's coming from me and not Troyer, but he said this to us.
Yeah, he did.
He is very, very stoked to be a part of this podcast, and he believes it's just as important as we believe it is.
And we're really excited. So we're going to stop talking, and we're just going to get right into it. So here is Garry Oker. Welcome, Garry.
Hey, Jenna.
Okay, so does that mean welcome?
Yes,
okay.
Jenna means how are you?
Oh, how are you? Okay.
And you would say, Ujoashe. Ucho
Ucho
Asche.
Asche.
Yeah.
Oh,
I am
Ucho
good.
Asche.
I am good.
I am good. Okay, very cool. So I guess the first question that I wanted to put forth is, so you're very, very creative, clearly, and we're looking around at your studio right now. People can't see it, but there's art everywhere and music, and it's beautiful. But so the term dreamer, do you come from dreamers?
Not Chine. That's what we call them.
Okay.
Not Chine. So they're the dreamers that had history of it. Yes, my grandfather was a dreamer. We call it Not Chine. We sing all their songs. They have the ability to actually travel in their dreams. So I guess the closest description I would say that would be astral travel in dreams.
Oh, cool.
So it's a whole discipline that our ancestors were very good at. So they can be able to travel in their dream and receive messages or songs, and upon awaken, they would bring it back into physical world. So they had the ability to travel between spiritual dimensions and physical world here. So pretty exciting to know about that, to understand that, and all the philosophies that they have provided us. We still practice it today by dreaming ahead for people.
So kind of like a prophecy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Like using prophecies to guide daily living and how to live and have a relationship with the land. And that all comes back all the way from, 12,500 years of Tse'k'wa. And what we're discovering is that a lot of our traditional stories talks about the connection to that land in that context, where a lot of our ancestors told stories about living among the giants, the giant animals, lineage. That's what we call them.
Okay. So were the dreamers, they were also the original leaders of the separate tribes of the Dane-zaa, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the communities around here have in their family kinships dreamers. So when we get together to talk about that, it's very exciting because we always learn something new from one another and share this knowledge. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. So Tse'k'wa, which is also known as the Charlie Lake Cave, it's one of the few known archaeological sites in northern British Columbia that date before 11,000 years ago. And one of them even fewer with record human activity, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about how Tse'k'wa was discovered?
Well, our ancestors always knew about it. We knew about it. They told stories about it, and people used to come to Charlie Lake to go fishing. Where the by the bridge there.
Yeah, that
was one of the fishing areas. So historically, they camped all around that lake. So the whole Charlie Lake cave and all around there. There's trails and stories of people camping in that area, and people have found lots of artifacts in and around that area.
Okay. So, but was there a slide or something that helped kind of unearth it a little bit, like with some of the artifacts?
Well, if you look at the history, the Simon Fraser University did an analysis on it. There's a whole story on it about how that, I guess the rock that was there fell. But there was a gully that formed in front of the cave, and that's where they did the archaeological dig. They went down 11 feet or something like that.
Oh, okay.
12 feet or something.
And so what exactly did they find?
Oh, they found all kinds of things, lots of arrowheads, only in the tree, giant animals like the giant ancestors of today's bison. Mm-hmm. We call it hukichuk.
So the bison, that's like an extinct now, right?
Yes, that is.
And they found like actually
bones of it, and they can study it and date it, and based on other discoveries, other places, that they can actually formulate what type it is and kind of visualize the size. It's about a third bigger than what it is today.
Wow.
So that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so they found also 2 ravens at this, remains. And they were also buried with an arrowhead, right? Am I saying that right?
Well, I mean, they were 1,000 years apart.
Oh, okay. So there's
Yes.
one older and
Yeah.
one, oh, wow. And
Yeah.
so they were used in a ritual,
Well, that's what
we think.
we think it is,
Okay.
and we're still doing some studies. But I think they definitely there would be something associated with that because we have stories about ravens and crows as transformatives. They're transformative hunters, and our stories go back to that time.
Oh, can you tell us a story?
Well, I mean, it's a long story.
Oh, okay.
You look so curious. You're like,
He said transformative.
Yeah, he's a
so
transformer. So he turns like one particular story. There's lots of them, but this one particular story was about this raven that came to transform himself into a man and a hunter, and came upon a village, and this village, this family had lots of sisters. So of course he wanted to have a wife. So he made himself useful by being around there and helping out, and he would go hunting, and obviously as soon as he goes out of sight, he'll transform back into raven, fly around and see a game, and then turn back into a man, and then kill the animal and then bring it back. So of course the father was very excited. Hey, there's a man that's my future son-in-law is a good hunter. So that's one of the stories, but it goes a long ways and different things happen. But that's one of the stories that we have where a raven was a transformer hunter to a family.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So I'm sure there was a link to that, those ravens that were found.
Yeah, but the fact that they were found like 1,000 years apart, but similar ritual is just so interesting. Wow.
That's very exciting to know about that. Yeah, we're just finding out more and more about what was done. I mean, they found all kinds of arrowheads and different tools and different things. It's known as one of the most undisturbed site. So that's why we advocated on a national level to make it into a historical site, because it's a very important national historic site. So now we're talking with Simon Fraser and UNBC to actually create a field school to actually do more digging up on top of the top, because most of the artifacts and things found were actually coming from the top. That's what they
So there's potentially a lot more to be discovered.
We know that there is.
There is. Okay. Yeah. So what did they use the cave for? Did they live in it, or did they just use it as like a campsite or as migration? Do we know?
Well, let's go back to time. There's a concept called the Bering Strait theory. I don't know, everybody is learned about that in school.
Oh gosh, I don't remember that.
So if you go back in time, they said that as soon as the ice, the glacier melted, the indigenous people from Siberia and Russia and that area came down.
Yeah, so this was like an ice-free kind of corridor. Yeah, okay.
So anyways, that was the theory. But, if you talk to our people, the people said, well, we always been here. So we have a context around that and say, hey, well, there's not just a one-way street. So, but if you look at the artifacts found, even at Site C, there are tens of thousands of artifacts found along the river. A lot of the artifacts are found from many, many places. So, for example, there was artifacts found in Dakotas, South Dakota.
Oh.
There was found in the Chilcotin area, and they were found over in Alaska. So there was a lot of different obsidians and different artifact pieces found that doesn't exist here. So what does that mean? That means people were actually coming and trading and traveling. So there's a movement of Dene people from all the different directions. So I talked to a lot of the other Dene groups, and everyone has a different stories and the areas that they kind of occupied and lived. So in the Beaver history around here, we've always had this seasonal rounds that people went around and round to this territory. So that's clear. And then there's other indigenous Dene that go up north to the Yellowknife and that type of area, to the Great Slave. So there's a lot of different movements, even down to Chilcotin. There was some obsidian found from there. So lots of Dene movement has happened, and that demonstrated to us that was always been a trade thing happening. People were trading things, trading goods with one another. So one of the future contexts is to develop that as a trade route again.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to add this too, and this is something we discussed before we went live here, is you've said that the Dene, weren't obviously just in kind of the BC area, but they went all the way down to the U.S., kind of spread throughout North America. Is that correct?
So yeah, what we're discovering recently is that if you look at the Dene, Beaver, Athabascan language dialect, there is a group in Siberia that were actually, their language dialect matches with the Navajos in southern states. And if you start to really look at some of the language of the Dene people or Beaver, Athabascan tribal people, a lot of the words are very similar. So for example, we would say sus, that means bear. Others would say sus, but it all meant the same thing. Sa is the sun. And everybody that I've spoke to, different Dene groups, they all say sa or si. Something that represents similar dialect, but at the same time meaning the same thing. So that's very interesting when you look at it from a linguistic point of view, how that is. All the way down in California, as a few years ago, I went down to a Dene language conference, and I met with Dene people there. They spoke very similar. You can understand that it's very similar in terms of language. So Northern California and Oregon, they were Dene people. And then all the way back up to the Apaches, the Navajos, to Dene down by Calgary. And then as you go up north, you have different various groups, all the way up to Yellowknife, all the way to Alaska. There's many, many different tribes.
So the artifacts that they found by Site C, what are they doing with those? What's the plan with the artifacts that they found there? Because there was a lot found during Site C, right?
Yes, there are tens of thousands of artifacts found. And when you actually look at it on a map, it's incredible the amount of artifacts. So we put a proposal to Site C and say, well, because of the damage that you're actually creating and claiming the land here and going to flood the areas, that you need to do something in terms of reconciliation to our culture. We just don't want that wiped out and flooded like they did last two dams. Mm-hmm. So now we're saying, no, build a cultural center.
Yeah, so you can preserve everything.
So we can actually not only preserve it, but to tell the story of the people. So now we're working with 13 different communities, all the impacted communities around the Peace River, to start planning and developing a cultural center that will showcase various stories and communities from Ice Age to digital.
And I just wanted to go back. You were talking about Doig, Prophet River and West Moberly purchasing the land for Tse'k'wa in 2012, I believe it was. Why did it take so long for the local First Nations to gain the land for the historic site?
Well, that's all part of the colonization. All the best lands are taken up by settlers and people that had money, and with government partnerships, they purchased all the different lands. And all along, people that originally owned the land, they said they'd rather have give it back to the native people because it belongs to the people. So that's what the owners did. And when they were ready to retire and sell their property, they offered it to the communities, and the community jumped at it and said, okay, we'll buy it back.
That's awesome. And so the joint purchase, is it hard? Is it difficult to manage? Because there's obviously a lot of people involved in it, right?
Well, there's 3 bands presently holding it. Yeah. But we have a representative on each from each community sitting as a board.
Oh, okay.
So we have a cultural heritage society that we're running it under, and we make decisions on what's happening. So just recently, we hired a executive director.
Yes, I met her. She's very nice.
Yeah, so we were lucky to find somebody like that that's got passion and energy to run it and to carry out the wishes, which is to turn it into cultural heritage repository. So it doesn't exist anywhere right now. All the cultural artifacts, and for years we've been complaining about this and to government about cultural heritage management, and they just any artifacts found on industrial development projects, they would just put it into a sea can behind Fort St. John Museum, and then store it there. So we said, well, no, we need a proper cultural protocols and processes in place to take care of this stuff, because we got to match our stories to it. So that's what happened, and we are starting to move towards that direction now, where we can actually have a cultural heritage repository for all the artifacts found, and then we can do the curation with the community, matching stories with them.
Okay, so what is your vision for Tse'k'wa? Because I know, like, you love big ideas, and I love the big ideas. So, like, what is your vision? Because you kind of wanted to be interactive, right? Like the museum?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to turn it into a world-class interpretive center, basically. People from all over the world. And we already got people coming in from all over the world interested in being part of developing it into a repository center or a place where the history can be taught. And because we had school tours, a lot of school kids love coming over there to that. And then all the visitors, along the Alaska Highway coming up and down, will be able to have a place to come and see. Virtual reality experiences, that's what we like to see, digital, to bring people back into time, back into Ice Age time.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, so you can actually have it in hologram, that'd be awesome too.
Like, it'd be cool to see how, like, a life-size version of, like, the bison, the ones that are extinct, like, how big were they really? Like, that would be cool to see.
Yes,
something like that.
That would be cool. And that's the idea. I mean, back in the day, we have stories about all these different giant animals, and so we definitely want to bring those alive and in consultation with community and do some creative works, and to bring it up so that people can actually have that amazing experience about how the people saw, what it was like back in the day.
Yeah. So you were talking about visitors coming. So I know right now it's kind of by appointment only, right?
Yes, you got to coordinate it.
Tse'k'wa.
Yeah, you gotta just make a call to Alicia and book a time. And we're actually working on doing a lot of renovation going on, and cutting out trails, setting up old villages, so that when people do come and see that, they can certainly see all the different artifacts. A couple of years ago, we have over 1,000 artifacts returned to us by a local farmer.
Wow.
Yeah, at Tse'k'wa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the farmer there, Donaldson, had a 350-acre property, farm, and he collected for years, like, I don't know, since 1948 or something like that. And he just kept collecting them, and finally he said, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I got to give it back to the people. So he eventually got it down to Simon Fraser when they actually analyzed it and put it into proper archiving system. And it's ready to come back to us. So we're now doing renovation at Tse'k'wa, so that we can bring that back and showcase it to the public.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool that he gave it back to you guys.
Yeah, we like to see all the local farmers and ranchers do that.
Yeah.
It would be awesome. I mean, we can make them a replica with 3D printing.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Or we can give them a pair of moccasins for exchange.
Oh. Well, if there's any farmers listening out there right now, if you have some artifacts, you can bring them to Garry. So was there any other caves like this in the area? Is there any of note that we know of? Any other?
Well, as far as I know, a few years back, National Geographic actually did a story on artifacts and found in North America. And this is actually was on the map saying it's one of the most significant in North America.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's, as you go up north, Old Crow, I believe, has some really old artifacts, 24,000 years or something, up to 40,000. So we don't know exactly, but this is the one that we know about.
So why is it so significant? Is it because the bones were so preserved, or like because it gives us some insight onto like what the land was like before? Like how why is it so significant?
All of it.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing was that from an archaeological perspective is that it was the most undisturbed land formation. And you can actually see the layers of land, undisturbed. So a lot of times when artifacts are found, it's already in a disturbed area. So it's hard to quantify sometimes what that is. But apparently this site, because it was in a gully right in front of the cave, anything that was on top fell down, and over the thousands of years, you can see different layers of strata of land, and it's really clear and very distinct. That's what makes it so interesting.
And you have a new dig coming. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. We have a partnership agreement with Simon Fraser and UNBC to do a community dig next year for 6 weeks. All the students that are involved in the course will come for 6 weeks and do an archaeological dig, be alive. So
that's such a cool opportunity for those kids to come and do that. So one's going to school, going to school for that, and then you get to go and do a live dig. Like, that's so cool.
Well, one of the things that they told us that they're changing the whole processes of archaeological finds and digs, because it was hijacked by them before, where Indigenous communities weren't really involved unless you're actually part of the dig. But the context of finding these artifacts is really meaningless. You can date it, you can study it, and you can find all kinds of analysis of it, whatever. But if you can't connect it to the story, to the local people, it's just a piece of rock. Mm-hmm. So they're now calling these field study schools where elders will be involved, the local language keepers and all that will be involved in actually curating that whole process. So very good learning, because you're bringing in traditional knowledge and languages and history from the eyes and the voices of the people.
Wow. So what is being done to protect the site then? Because this is obviously huge significance. So how do we protect it?
Well, I think the main thing that we want is to ensure that the public supports it and come and learn about it. I think a lot of people, even local people, don't even know. I mean, they heard about it. Growing up, everybody goes to the party. But it doesn't really, it's just a place, hey, let's go check out the cave. But they don't really know the history or the significance of it. So our goal is to inform the public and have it available for the experiences. So that's why we got to book time and get some tours if there's a big group of people coming in, and then also making it friendly for people to come there, like having outhouses, access to toilet and all kinds of things, and make sure the trails are done properly so that safety, because you got to walk through some bush areas.
Yeah, so me and my daughters walked down, and we did the little on Truth and Reconciliation Day. We did the little walk down that you guys had, and it had like the little T-shirts there that had the translation of Beaver, and it was really cool to go and like read that to them, because then they were like learning as they went, and just going down and just learning all these different words in a different language was kind of kept them engaged. But they thought the cave was really cool. they got to go in it, which they were really excited about that. So
I got a text message from Jenna saying that I'm not going to fit there. I really, really want to go. I wasn't able to that day. And she sends me a picture with her kids, like
all crouched down.
You're
Yeah, I mean, we just love setting it up and opening it up for kids because that's where the learning occurs, right?
Yeah.
And they're all fascinated. They have no preconceived ideas about anything. It's just like, oh wow, there's a cave and there's artifacts, and yeah. So then we add stories and songs to it.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much more alive. So
They loved the teepee too. The teepee that you guys had set up there. Yeah, it was awesome. They were running around in it, just like playing, and yeah, it's really beautiful. So I was just wondering if there was a prophecy that you know of from your ancestors that you'd be willing to share with us.
well, I mean, there's lots of prophecies. It depends. We can have the prophecy of what happened even with the Site C. There's prophecies of the in the early 1700s. There's prophecies of the dreamers. They can foresee the future, and they predicted what's going to happen. They predicted the land being taken over by non-Indigenous peoples. They predicted that there's going to be so much development going on that so much matchsticks. It's like matchsticks, matches. The sticks that you won't know if it's day or night.
Oh,
And they also predicted the big snakes that will be in the ground. They're protecting the pipelines.
oh,
And they also protected the caging of animals. The animals were going to die out. And we're seeing those effects right now because like there's so many people coming in and shooting animals, and even government policy, like they have this stupid policy about killing a cow and a calf to kill off the wolves. That doesn't make sense. Like those kind of things, government policies about wildlife management, that kind of thing, those all kind of prophesize and that, hey, this is what's going to happen if we continue a certain way of being, cutting down all the trees and multiple farms being opened up and pipelines and oil and gas and all that industrial development. So the impacts of it today, we're really starting to see what's happening in that a lot of areas. People are coming in from down south and Alberta into our area to go hunting, and they're just shooting. Like a lot of them are actually poaching. So we're seeing a lot of that effect. So elders are concerned that there will be no moose left. So that covers our treaty right to hunt and fish. So definitely prophecies were told about that. But at the same time, there's great prophecies about looking for your song, hanging on to your dreamer songs and hanging on to your language. So they say, so that you can live a good life. If you look for your songs and you find your purpose, you got to serve the people. To help the people. And so those are kind of things that we like sharing, like what we can do to work with one another, to be collaborative, good neighbor. To be a good neighbor, that means, let's beat the racism. Let's beat the, and through that process, it's all about education and learning. So that's why Tse'k'wa and the cultural history of the tens of thousands of years of our ancestors being around here is so important. Because we want to be able to expand that knowledge to how to best live in a way that, first of all, there's going to be something to look forward to, and at the same time, to be a good neighbor with one another.
I like the finding your song. I like that. I like the significance of it, and just finding your purpose in life, and giving is better than receiving kind of thing. But yeah, that's really interesting. All right. So the future plans for the site, what are we looking at for timeline wise for Tse'k'wa? Because obviously there needs some funding needs to come in, right? And then what? So what's going to be the process? Like, is this going to take like a 10-year process to get like the actual interactive museum going? Like, what do you think it's going to be?
I think we're on our way very, very well right now.
Okay.
We had some success in getting some funding in different areas. So we're moving. It's happening. Like, for example, the house is being renovated right now. There's some really cool things already taking place, and every month we see progress happening. So by next year, I think that we're going to have pretty cool things. We're actually got a big dome coming.
Oh,
Yeah, for that to house all the artifacts and have a place where the archaeological dig will occur. So that's going to be a real cool infrastructure.
yeah.
So we're really looking at infrastructure, make sure that everything is done according to code and safety, of people coming in.
Yeah.
And like even railings that got to go down to the cave so that people that do walk, because right now you got to kind of hang on to a tree and
Yeah.
kind of make your way down.
It's kind of part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly. But we still got to have some railings in there for
Yeah.
people that they don't fall, and
Yeah.
that's the last thing we want to get sued for.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I think it's in progress right now, and as you come there, you're gonna find changes happening.
Yeah. So like teachers can book to go and see Tse'k'wa, right? Like they can
Absolutely.
bring their classes there, and like pretty much anybody can go. You just have to book ahead of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely want to open it up for the public and to have a great experience to come there. Like you said, with your daughter, you came.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Certainly, if you have schools want to book a timeout to come and check it out, that's just book the contact our executive director.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I would like you to tell me a little bit about your music, if that's okay.
My favorite. Can I play a song for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's such a cool way to kind of bring it into the next generation. I think music is such a good way to do that.
Yeah, I've always been involved in music. I was given a drum when I was like 4 years old. My grandpa made me a drum, and every once in a while I get an elbow to my ribs because I was off beat.
Oh gosh.
And then okay, pay attention. So I learned how to drum by just that. So, and now I'm one of the song keepers and do a lot of ceremonies and things like that, which is so amazing and loving it.
So what does a song keeper mean?
Song keeper meaning that you have paid your dues to take care of the songs.
Oh.
So I spent many years, 30-some years of apprenticing after Tommy Atachi, and now I'm apprenticing under Sammy Aku. And they're the master keepers of songs. They know history, who sings them, stories of them. And so I've been learning and still learning how to play those songs and learn them.
While we're on the topic of music, can you tell me a little bit about what drum songs are used for?
The songs we are drummers for tea dances.
Oh.
So tea dances when everybody gets together and have a feast and drink tea and coffee and dance around a fire. And we sing all these beautiful songs that goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years. Today, we do a lot of opening ceremonies for different events. It's really like a blessings of things, like songs ahead of time, I call it. And when we do these things and open it up, it holds a spiritual space for people to enter this space or this ceremony or opening up an event and hold a space in peace and good spirits. So that's really what it is. We have dreamer songs that we play a lot at the tea dances, and it's just a way of connecting to the spiritual context of life. That everything is alive.
Can I just ask how Treaty 8 was formed?
Well, Treaty 8 was part of the treaty. The original treaties was signed in the early 1899 at Lesser Slave Lake. So then when the Klondikers were going through here, going to Yukon, the 500 of our ancestor warriors stopped them at the peace banks and say, no more, you're not coming through here. You're disrupting our the land and leaving garbage and just being totally disrespectful. So therefore, you cannot come through here no longer. So then they sent a messenger back to the commissioner back in Lesser Slave Lake when the original Treaty 8 was signed. So they sent a commissioner. So by the time the commissioner came back, all our ancestors moved back to their hunting territory. So the following year, 1900s, May 26th, they came back, and that's when treaty was signed with the local Beaver tribe.
Okay. So, and that's 8 different tribes. Sorry, can you explain who all Treaty 8 all is?
Well, there's many different groups that are part of signing treaty with the federal government at different time periods. But the original one was the Fort St. John Indian Band, comprised of the Oigura First Nation and Blueberry First Nation.
Okay. So I have one more question for you, and we're going to be asking every guest this. But what does reconciliation mean to you?
Well, I think right now what you're doing is reconciliation. It's talking to the people and sharing the stories of the people and the voices of the people is part of recognition, honoring the people that are here, the original inhabitants, creating partnerships, working with each other in a business, opening up and being inclusive to things. And in and around Fort St. John area, we have good relationship. We're good neighbors with a lot of people. And people are reaching out to us just like you are and say, hey, we would like to be part of a podcast here. That's reconciling our differences and to share the goodness of being a human with one another.
Yes, I agree. And thank you so much for doing this podcast. We really appreciate it. And we are going to have you on again, I'm sure. because there's so many topics we could hit on, but we definitely wanted to focus on Tse'k'wa in this one. And we just want to let everybody know you can head to Tse'k'wa's website, right? And get some information on there on how to book an appointment and go and see the historical site. But thank you so much for doing this, and we look forward to having you again.
Ucho asanala. Ucho asanala.
Ucho ansanalak.
Asanala. You did me good. That's awesome.
Thank you, Garry.
Okay, bye-bye.
That was an exciting first episode, and I hope everybody listening enjoyed it. Make sure you guys subscribe to Before the Piece using your favorite podcast app or at www.energeticcity.ca/podcasts.
If you have a guest or program idea, make sure you email beforethepiece@moosefm.ca.
And one thing I just wanted to clear up before we are done here is if anybody wants to book in to see Tse'k'wa, to go to the Charlie Lake Cave, they can call Alyssa, who is the executive director, and her phone number is 250-224-7906, or you can email her at tse'k'waheritage@gmail.com, which is spelled TSEKWA heritage@gmail.com. And we just wanted to thank everyone again who listened, and keep tuning in because we have some pretty special guests lined up.
Definitely, this podcast is going to grow. It's going to get better and better. And I would just like to say, hey, Jenna, bye for now.
Bye, Trey.